Thank you for joining us today for the Artificial Intelligence or AI for Small Businesses, part of APAC's Small Business webinar series. My name is Rasha Palau. I am the Associate Executive Director of the Asian Pacific American Chamber of Commerce, also known as APACC. This year, APACC celebrates 24 years of promoting the economic advancement of Asian American Pacific Islanders and facilitating business relationships between business owners with Asian heritage and US-based companies. APACC has achieved great success over the years, and we owe it to the support of various communities and individuals. These include businesses owned by Asian Americans with heritage from China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam, the Philippines, and India, as well as Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, business professionals, cultural organizations and associations, and political and government dignitaries. All of them have played a significant role in our achievements. We are a collective voice for 30 plus Asian and Asian Pacific countries. We are able to do this through our strategic partnership with Asian Cultural Association throughout Michigan and nationally, as well as through the support of our sponsors. A special thanks to General Motors for supporting the AAPI small business communities. Now, let me begin by introducing Al Pasha. Al is a valuable member of APAC's Small Business Action Committees. He is also the owner and president of APACC Inc., a software development and IT consulting company based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. APACC is a minority-owned business. Al has been working in the information technology field for over 25 years and has a commendable journey since 1996. He is an innovative leader in this field and has expertise in software system analysis, project management, risk management, and the development and implementation of information systems. His expertise spans across several various sectors, including retail, supply chain, e-commerce solutions, fintech, facility management, waste management, and energy markets. Algie, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you very much, Rachapa. That was an impressive introduction of mine. I don't think I deserve that much, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. And everybody has heard what I do and stuff like that, but let me not talk about me. Today we are here to talk with Charlie and learn a little bit more about artificial intelligence. So let me give you a little bit background for Charles. Charles, it's my honor to introduce you. So Charles Eldwood, he's the founder of Solismatica, is a tech visionary dedicated to leveraging artificial intelligence for impact. With a background in electrical engineering and industrial administration, he honed his expertise at Delphi Automotive and Johnson Controls. In 2019, he founded Solismatica, aiming to revolutionize education, tourism, and healthcare through artificial intelligence, data, and neural voice technologies. The company, a beacon of innovation, offers transformative solutions globally, with partnerships expanding to reach to Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Charles' leadership focuses on AI for inclusive education and providing a neural voice for those without one. Today, he channels his expertise into aiding automotive and manufacturing sectors through ethical AI applications using large language models like GPT-4 to empower industries. Charles' visionary approach has positioned Solismatica at the forefront of technology, inspiring colleagues and improving countless lives, a testament to the transformative power of guided technology. Charles, thank you for taking the time to speak with us and to educate us about artificial intelligence and how it can help small businesses, big businesses, single startup, entrepreneurs, everyone, okay? And before I give you the mic, I am very fearful of AI. So I hope during a presentation, you will touch upon how not to be feared, how not to have fear of AI, artificial intelligence, of not taking away a job or not making you jobless or obsolete or whatever. Okay. Charles, it's my honor to introduce you, and please go for it.
Oh,
Thank you.
LG, ขอบคุณครับ. Thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
thank you, Mot and Duke, for putting this together, right? This webinar. And it's an important topic. And I've been living in this world for a little while. So let me start sharing my screen here. All right, we're gonna go share this one. And like you, Al, you know, that was a lot of words and a lot. I hope I could justify that. That was, you know, I don't know if I can. I hope I could be of value and add to everyone's understanding of AI today. So kind of demystify it, I think, and show some really interesting statistics. So I guess, Al, we'll start out, and I hope this is a conversation too. So Rajapa and Al, and I think Duke will be in the behind the scenes and type in some questions. But you know, I just wanted to, you know, I'm on LinkedIn. If anybody in the community needs to reach out to me, especially in the Michigan communities, small business, medium businesses, go find me on LinkedIn. That's where I post about AI once a week, twice a week. But you know, I just wanted to point this out. I did a TEDx talk, and if you go, there's a link on my LinkedIn website. And Rajapa, you've watched it. Al, I don't know if you've seen the TEDx talk, but in it, I utilize custom neural voice, right? And I'm allowing people who, let's say, have throat cancer or ALS or cerebral palsy who have lost a voice. I can record a voice and give it back to them, like their original voice. And it's pretty powerful. I demo 2 voices in my TEDx talk. And I just want to touch on, before we go into you know, your questions, about 3 years ago now, 4 years ago, I started my own business, and then I got the Microsoft AI MVP award, which gives me access to the engineers at Microsoft who are working on the AI projects. And then I got a Microsoft startup like tag or benefits, which allows me to utilize Azure resources with OpenAI integrated. So those are pretty powerful things. So I'll pause there for any questions from Al or Rajapa.
Right now, I have no questions. I have a fearful question, but you know, we can dig into it once you're ready. And yeah, no, thank you. That was a great introduction, Charles.
All right. And I got a note to change to presentation mode. So thank you. The Duke is behind the scenes. So let's before I go into this slide, I want to address the fearful one, because that is the reason I started down the path of exploring AI. It was 3 years ago. I started my business, and at the time it was data analytics and Power BI. And I saw AI like just gaining steam, especially during the pandemic, right? And I thought, man, this thing is gonna, you know, I had that, like Al said, I was like, this thing's gonna take my job. You know, I was like, it can analyze data like snap of a finger. So I started using it and I started exploring it, and I was like, wow, this is powerful. Like, because, you know, for me, it's like, it's a math model of all the data that was ever put on to the internet. And it was a probability math model. And you could ask it questions and it gave you kind of an average normalized answer. But then you can layer different, you know, you've heard of students layering, like, you know, take this essay and make it, you know, aggressive, make it soft, make it polite. Like, you can change the style of the language, which is, you know, incredible for me. And, you know, I saw that you could take it from different perspectives. It's like, well, take this essay that I wrote as a Asian American half Thai and, you know, write it in maybe like, you know, how somebody from Denmark, you know, a Scandinavian person would see it, right? And it could change its lens on that piece of writing and move over there. And I was like, that's what AI meant to me. And I was like, this is powerful, right? So any thoughts on that, Al or Rajpa?
I actually do, because I can totally relate to you. I'm also speaking English as a second language. And I believe that as coming into the countries which English is a main language, and I constantly trying to translate in my head, like how to use that in a professional context to make sure that I come across as I meant to, and things like that. I would love to understand a little bit more, and if you could share a little bit on what prompts I could use in my professional job to make me sound like more professional, come across like a native speaker, or if I can perhaps like open my windows to touch on other language. How am I able gonna do that as like English as my second language?
No, that's absolutely a good one. So I'm going to note that down, and then Al, your thoughts.
No, I think you hit the thing. I mean, I speak to a lot of small businesses, owners and employees at the businesses, and their question is the owners want to use AI, but they do not know how to leverage AI in their business. But when I speak with the employees like they are fearful.
Yeah.
Oh, AI is going to take away my job. I'm going to be jobless. What do I do? And I don't want to use AI because it will take away my job. And there's always a conflict between what the owners want to do and the employees want to do, because they both have conflicting views of this technology.
Yeah.
And so if you can help shed some fears, A, for the owners, the business owners, and B, for the employees of those business owners, I think that'd be coming from you will be much more better than coming from me telling them, hey, don't fear, everything is fine.
Yeah.
But
no, those are good points too. And I think in my last slide, I have some examples. So those will help with the prompts, I think, and just learning how prompt engineering, that's the critical skill, is how, because it's funny, it's a language model, but you got to speak the language to get the good information out. So in a way, you have to learn how to speak to it. So I'll show you some examples. But, I think to your point, Al, so I started using it and I saw it accelerate my life, like my creativity, my problem solving. It helped me connect with other humans. Like when I do a presentation now, I use it to change my stories that I present. Like today I did this, how do I reach automotive, small, medium Asian businesses and help them, be less fearful of AI? And it gave me a bunch of tips, right? And I was like, wow, I can make more impact and more human connections with the world now. And I give it to all my three boys and they use it and they're learning, they're more creative. And we'll talk a little bit about my son at University of Michigan, who, like, at first he was hesitant, but now he uses it. And he's like, I wish all students and everybody would use this because it makes you more creative. Like, I love using it now, right? Is what he told me. And then my wife too, she just got a job recently at Penguin Random House. And she found it's helped her with confidence, with speaking more confidently. Like you said, Rajpa, once you find the way to speak more professional and you're more confident, it helps lift you up as a person. You can make more impact in society. So we'll jump back into some of these too as we go through this presentation. But let's go. I wanted to point out some statistics, and I think that will generate some more questions too. So this first slide is I go into Google Trends all the time, and I ask, ChatGPT, what's the interest level? And they measure this by, which countries are using it relative to all the searches that they do in that country, right? And China, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Nepal, right? Really interesting. A lot of the Asian countries are really, really searching, very, very interested. And I think China is actually banned. So that's even more interesting. And I've heard there's cottage industries like in China and Vietnam too, where they are setting up, kind of like, US-based emails and ways to pay because they want to get access to this, right? And so that leads to some interesting questions like, why do these countries, even though it's banned, people are fighting to get access to this technology? Let me go to the next slide. This is very interesting too. On the left, this is a Pew Research study that was done, I think, in May of last year. And if you go down, it shows, how much you know about ChatGPT, a lot, a little, or nothing at all by different ethnic groups, right? And you see there Asians with an asterisk, representative of Asian. So this is in all the English or all the Asian people in the US that were surveyed. 46% use it a lot, know a lot about it, right? So this is an interesting demographic or study, right? Is like, why do Asians, you saw, why are there such a great interest, and why, when surveyed, is this group the most likely to use it? And I'm going to pause and for questions after this, but then you see, so I put some snippets of some news articles. This is Singapore. Singapore, I think it's last February, you see there, February 22nd, 2023, the Ministry of Education in Singapore took ChatGPT and integrated through their whole school system, K through 12 and universities. And you think about that for a second, like they did this so fast because ChatGPT came out in December, I think. But by February, Singapore already said, we're going to put it into our education system and elevate the learning of our students, right? So Al, I'm going to pause, and I think you have a question.
Oh, no, this is fantastic statistics. I was not aware of these statistics that you shared. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about Singapore government, right? So this fall, in September 2023, University of Michigan opened a ChatGPT. Okay. To an extent, there was a big news out that, hey, we are going to allow students and professors use it.
Yeah.
Use it for whatever they think it'll help them with their research, with their education, with learning. So there was no restrictions. And they actually made it more friendlier, more open, and said, go for it, do it. And I think it's a fantastic thing. Now, all the students at the university, for them, ChatGPT and any of the AI tools are available for them to use it without any repercussions on their grades.
Yeah. That's
hey, you cheated, so I'm going to reduce your points because you cheated. You use artificial intelligence. No, they are encouraging that.
Yeah.
So
I'm wearing my
fantastic
shirt, and I think Duke, did you go to Michigan? Is that right?
I did not go to Michigan. I am a Wayne State University alum, but I do want to point out that these statistics are really, I think they speak a lot to the fact that Asians are oftentimes early adopters of technology, new technology.
Yeah, and Rachapal, you had a comment too?
Yes, it's really interesting because I wouldn't say I recently graduated because that's a long time ago. But by that time, when I had to do all my dissertation, I remember that I was struggling because of my language skill. Back then, I had to hire a proofreader to actually review my dissertation and everything else. I wasn't confident in my writing skills. And with that saying, there's also plagiarism check at the back of that. And now that these chat GPT is available, like people can use that for research in place of Google. They can also use that as a platform to generate their paperworks for them. And I'm sure that'd be controversies that like some educational institutes probably be like, hey, your work, I have no way of knowing whether it's original, or on the other hand, they're fully adopting them like Singapore. Actually, we're going to teach everyone how to do it properly. And that's really eye-opening. And as Duke mentioned, these statistics shows that like a lot of our heritage like is early adopters to like ChatGPT, AI, and technology. So that's awesome.
Yeah, this is it was eye-opening when I started looking into the numbers and how many Asians are in STEM, how many have upper level degrees, like you said, do the research. The research side of things, I've talked to other PhDs and they said, especially imagine you come from a country and you don't speak English natively. You're going to a US university maybe, and you have to read all these research papers and try to get all this information. Like, what if you used AI to point you, and he told me even an English speaker has to read a whole research paper, and sometimes he scraps that. And it's like, this is not relevant, or this is not what I want to use. But imagine now you can point it at the right research papers and then help it, somebody who doesn't understand the language, understand that article. And what does that do for research and productivity of humanity, right? It just increases our ability to research more. So that's a great point. And a story about University of Michigan. So my son goes there now, and he's in music education. I wanted to tell this story too, because I told Al and Rachapa yesterday. But he's in music education, and he told me, he's like, Dad, he wasn't interested. He's like, this won't impact music, and I'm not interested. But it was about 2 months ago, like you said, Al, they allowed GPTU. They have a model that they use, and he screenshotted and sent me his assignment in musicology class. And it was, this is opera, analyze these 3 operas, write your own assessment of them, and then use ChatGPT to do the same assessment and tell me, how did this help you? What did you think of ChatGPT? And he called me right away. He's like, Dad, I used it. I used it on assignment. The teacher let me use it. Can you get access to GPT-4? He's like, I need it now. And he's like, it increased my creativity so much. Like, he's like, you wouldn't believe it. I think all people, and I'm so glad that University of Michigan did this, because it allowed him, like I think before there was that fear of plagiarism, but the U of M said, it's okay. Use this to learn, to help humanity, to make an impact. And he did, and it allowed him to follow that dream, right? So I don't know if anything to add on that, but Al, thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome. I mean, Singapore government is doing it. I mean, that's it. I mean, everybody should be doing it, not hiding away from it. But
yeah.
And in music too, I didn't realize how, because ChatGPT is text-based.
Yeah.
It's not voice-based. I at first, when you told me the story, I was like, how is this gonna help in music? Music requires voice. It's text. How is this gonna be possible? And there you go, the creativity generations. And it gets me wondering, with relevance to small businesses, right? So we now have technology, we do have even music, or even your work, who you give the people who has lost their voice back. What about other industries like automotives or something else that you could show us or tell us?
Oh yeah, I got a good story in Thailand. But before we go into that, you mentioned, what does a business do? What could we use in small businesses, right? And some of the stuff I work on is super fascinating. I love it because, audio is being integrated, text to speech, speech to text, and then it feeds the text large language model, the GPT-4 in the middle, because I think that Whisper API is one of them that uses audio and feeds this. And then there's DALL-E now, which can generate images or pull images into GPT-4, the text base. So 2 examples, I won't go into super deep specifics, but let's say you have a company that makes something from mechanical drawings, and it takes your engineers and your quoting team hours to flip through drawings or do a PDF, look at all the specifications, pull those out, and then create a budget or an estimate from the drawings, right? So I'm working on right now where, it understands mechanical drawings. Like, I can import a CAD drawing, and it pulls out this shape and describes it, and pulls out the dimensions and the requirements, material, size, etc. And then you can feed the GPT-4 models like, this is the, the part, these are the requirements, give me an estimate so I can quote them, right? So hours, we've seen companies that do quotes, and it takes hours, and then you send the quote out and it gets rejected, and you've wasted all that time. Like, I'm working on now, and I've seen this happen in seconds, right? You could take a drawing, it extracts all the requirements, generates the quote, sends it out. Unbelievable stuff. The other one is, I was just talking to, you have an architect making a drawing. He creates the architectural drawing, but then they go to, the construction, the electrical team, the pipes, all these sub drawings are created. And then the architect has to look at the architectural drawing and make sure that it's translated correctly to the mechanical or the wiring diagrams or whatever. with that vision now, you can just extract all those drawings and make sure it matches the architectural drawings, right? I mean, it does that so fast, which are some of the, those are some of the forward looking, but I mean, I'm working on them, so they're almost here. So, any questions before we go to the next slide?
No questions, but it's just a remarks. Like when you tell these stories, right? I felt that instead of being fearful of using it, it's actually such a great and awesome tools to use to help your creativity, your productivities, your team's effort to actually achieve business results.
Yeah.
And I feel that, oh my gosh, I wish that people could understand it and adopt it sooner and try it out so they understand how they could utilize it to their own benefits to help increase their productivities. And you make me feel like I want to try it even more now, like in different ways. And I didn't realize how adaptable it could apply in different things. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And my son at University of Michigan, and there was another young gentleman. I think he just started, he's a freshman in high school, and he was asking me how to use AI. He wanted to find data on cancer statistics and wanted to help cure cancer, right? And this was a young gentleman, young teen, who was using AI on data to try to change the world, make it a better place. Like, that's just what's possible and inspirational about that young generation. But my son and another one too, I was like, have you used this to cheat? And, they all admit, it's like, yeah, at the beginning, I used it and it wrote that paragraph and I was like, I could turn this in or whatever. But, they all told me it's like we tried it and that got boring. I think humans want to learn. They're interested, right? And I think once they see that this thing can cheat, they say, I don't really want it for that. And if you teach them right, I think what Singapore is doing, if you teach them right, they get bored of that phase and then they start using it to really learn and do new stuff, right? And be creative. And the younger generation, they're already moving. Like you said, Al, at University of Michigan, our kids are being trained on how to use this. So we're going to go to the next slide, which is, I think, is interesting because kind of like Rachapa, what you said, you're like, well, why do Asians? Why are we so interested in that, right? So I stuck this into, I use Azure OpenAI, which is ChatGPT inside of Azure. And the reason I use that is because they don't take any of the questions I put in to retrain the model. Like, this is important for some of the small and medium businesses, is just be aware, if you use the free ChatGPT or you pay $20 a month, if you don't have the right settings, they could take some of your data and retrain the model. But if you use it inside of Azure, it just stays, with me basically, or with you. Once it's gone, it's gone. But I asked ChatGPT, I was like, why do we typically, are more interested in ChatGPT? And it isolated some of the things we talked about, Rajapa. I think one is cultural emphasis on technology and education. I know my mom, she's Thai. She was like, Charlie, STEM, science, study, educational attainment. I know she was pushing, get a master's degree, push, which is good. I'm glad she did it. We're typically in very professional fields. You mentioned the language and communication. Asia, all kinds of languages. We all come to the States. We're all trying to learn, the American, and we talked about, there's slang, there's words that we don't know maybe when we first come over, right? Networking and community is an interesting one. We like kind of like this. Duke, you invited me to this community where we share knowledge about what we just learned, and then youth demographics and socioeconomic status. So the youth one I was going to dig into because I just did this before this webinar. But it seems like we have a younger generation, and I think it's mentioned this too. But back in Thailand, cell phones are used for payment now. Like I know in Korea, Japan, a lot of Asian countries are very technologically, I get literate. So I can see that they bring that over when they immigrate to the US maybe. So any comments on that? But I thought this was fun. I took what I just learned in the statistics and and had ChatGPT explain it to me.
No, this is fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Charles.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. And you were talking about payments and using cell phones, right? So back in India, cell phone, everybody has a cell phone.
Yeah.
And they are now, thanks to COVID, they are now pretty much all cashless transactions. Okay.
Yeah.
Even your local corner store, who's probably not as educated as you are, who probably does not even have a high school degree, diploma, wants you to send him money electronically.
Yeah.
For anything that you buy, even if you buy for a penny, he doesn't want to touch the money. Say, just here's my QR code, scan it, and boom.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fantastic.
QR codes. I saw that in Thailand too. Everybody's got their membership, or and they had QR codes. We were in line, I think, at McDonald's, and they were ordering and paying right in line.
Yeah.
And they just
ties to the bank account. So everyone has QR code, you scan and you pay. It's as easy as that. And to the point that I felt that we are not only, as you mentioned, literate, we become so reliant on it.
Yeah.
And it's the start of COVID that we started that, because we were trying so hard to make everything as much contactless as possible to help with the situation back then.
Yeah, that's so, and your reliant thing is very interesting, because I've used GPT-4 for, as long as it's been out, but AI, large language models, I started using it maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and AI about 3 years ago. And I'm almost at the point where I'm so productive, I'm dependent on it. And, what I'm fearful of is if the server goes down, what do I do?
Too.
Yeah. And OpenAI, every once in a while, it goes down, right? And luckily, Azure OpenAI is a little more stable, a lot more stable, so they don't go down as much. My son was using it, and he came to me one night because he cached his password on his browser, but his browser reset it. And he came to me, he's like, Dad, I need this for my AP Chem because I use it to tutor me on AP Chemistry, but I lost my password and I need GPT-4 because Google just doesn't help. It's got ads, it's got disconnected information. It doesn't get to the answer like GPT-4 does. So even my son is starting to get dependent on it. So Duke, did you have a question?
I do. Well, and actually more of a comment. I know that people are fear of dependency on new technology, but I think that if I, I feel old here. I remember before emails and and how people were so fearful that that the world would be dependent on emails. And and not just that, but cell phones, same thing. That the world was so dependent on cell phones and texting. Like people are like, "Don't text me, call me," and that wasn't that long ago. That was in the 90s. People were like, don't text me, call me. I don't know why you're texting me. And I was one of those people. So yes, the world changes, technology changes. This is just that next step for us. We can either wait to be that, to adopt later, or we can adopt now and take advantage of the opportunities that AI affords us.
Yeah, no, it's and I was talking about my fear because there is so much opportunity that I'm fearful of losing it, right? I get so much value. My boys get so much value. My wife gets so much value, like my family. And that's why I'm doing this webinar and I do these, the TEDx and everything, is because I've gotten so much value. I want to give this gift and value to other people, and I want to encourage them to use it. And kind of like Rajpal, you said you're so excited because you hear about these opportunities, right? Kind of like giving somebody a voice who has lost their voice, or somebody who's never had a voice. If you give them a voice, so they can have freedom and participate in our society, that was unimaginable 3 years ago. But me as a normal family parent, dad, and with this opportunity, I was like, if I'm just a normal person, and I can give somebody their identity and voice back, what could everybody else do in society with this, powerful, magical tool. What could we all do? We could chase our dreams and really make a change, right? So that's why I do this, is because I've seen so much value generated. And we're going to go into some tips on how to get started too. So some of you haven't gotten started, and I'll lay some of that out. But also, I was just in Vietnam, and we're going to go into that story, and Thailand for I was talking about AI, but the embassy in Vietnam, the U.S. embassy, told us as a group, is fascinating in Vietnam because there's so many motorcycles, and they all, was it Dart or Dash? There was an app. Do you know what it is, Rachapa? Is a green logo, but you
Is
can
it Grab? I mean, Grab.
Yes.
Yeah, it is Grab. It is Grab.
Yeah, the embassy, and the U.S. embassy said Vietnam has such an infrastructure set up with motorcycles and Grab that you could like order coffee, lunch, anything, and it shows up on a motorcycle within seconds. They're like, this infrastructure is amazing. And I observed that. I was like, there's so many motorcycles everywhere. There were even lanes dedicated to motorcycles on the bridge. I was like, this is fantastic. So
Thailand doesn't have a lane, but I'm guilty. Before I moved here last year, I order Grab like more than 3 times a day for my groceries, for lunch. Sometimes me, my husband, and my kids, we all want different things. So we just order 3 different things. And the price model is so different from here because they do deliver them on scooter. So it's just, or sometimes they just walk or like bicycle delivery to you, because in Thailand it's so tropical. We don't have issues with like the weather and things like that. And I just use it so frequently. And of course the payment is all connected by technology and things like that, make it so easy to access.
Yeah, it was so much fun to go to Thailand and Vietnam and see all this technology. And I understand now why, if that transfer happens and the Asians that are there come and bring these ideas, I could see why the adoption of technology is so much faster. And like Al said, digital currency phones, the use in India and even that region too, like it's there, it's moving. So, and back to this trip. So I'm going to go into this trip unless Al, you have a comment?
No, I didn't have a comment. I just wanted to add, it makes America payment system look so old and antique.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it does.
Yeah.
It doesn't look modern at all, but that's a story and conversation from other day.
Yeah. No, it's we should have another webinar, but
that's a different story. So
yeah, that's a different story. The lessons learned from Asia, maybe what we could bring. So I'm going to go into this story, which is kind of related in a way. So Bing Goi and I went on a trade mission, and with Automation Alley to Vietnam first, and then we went to Thailand. And I was, talking about my OpenAI services and ChatGPT, and I got into Microsoft, and this is kind of, insight into how this is evolved so quickly. This was in April of 2023. I landed, and Microsoft in Thailand said, come with us to the EGAT office. And Rachapa, you may have some insight on EGAT, but my understanding is they're the government electrical grid authority of Thailand. So they set up all the electrical distribution. And I was like, whoa, like I'm coming in with ChatGPT, OpenAI, Azure, inside of Azure, and Microsoft is inviting me to the headquarters of the electrical grid. And what was really interesting is I learned from the embassy too, that there's a lot of EVs coming from China into Thailand. And Thailand is, interestingly, the tie to Michigan is, we're considered the Detroit of the Southeast Asia because of the large truck, I think in Rayong, right, Rachapa?
There's a lot of like free trade zone and manufacturing, like all the industrial communities are like out there in Rayong. Yes.
Yeah. So we've got this large manufacturing automotive base, and then we have lots of EVs coming in from China, a lot of technology flowing in. And so the electrical grid authority, since they're the central authority, they have to start prepping the infrastructure, the charging stations, just making sure electricity gets to the charging to all the cars. And I learned this from Microsoft that day. But one fascinating application that I think small and medium businesses should start to investigate is I noticed, and I tried this at home, but you can say, I'm simulate a charging station that is starting to fail in this region in Thailand, right? And simulate the data that would come off this machine, right? And so I watched as ChatGPT generated like a flow of data, like all these sensors were giving off data. And, I watched one of the things was a voltage level and it started to fall, right? And I was like, wow, like it took the context and simulated that situation in Thailand in a certain region, maybe heat or something, right? So I took another window, disconnected, and I said, take this data and imagine that it's from a charging station in Thailand in this region, and what is going on? Like what part on the charging station may be failing based on this data? And it analyzed it and it was like, well, it looks like the voltage is falling, or maybe this component, or it could be this component. Like it was problem solving based on data it simulated, right? So you can run simulations on your data on something that you're planning to do, maybe risk analysis, whatever, and then you could have it try to debug and solve the problem that the data just generated. Just like I was like, how powerful is that? So that was the one thing I learned about how this technology can help, for example, a country like Thailand, with the infrastructure, with the grid in preparation for the future, right? In automotive of all things, like Michigan related. So anything to add, Rajapal or Al?
No, this is very interesting. So based on what you're saying, it could also take historical failures, data from past history, what has failed, and then try to project it and say, hey, these three parts or these three components have high failure rates, which for an engineer would take them days and weeks to analyze all that information.
Right.
And give it to the engineering team or the supply chain or some other people, vendors, hey, fix this component. This is the biggest pain in the neck for us. But this is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a quick thing. I know Thailand and a lot of all the Asian countries are going towards electric cars and electric stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
What fears, do they have any fears about AI coming into their job market, right? Everything getting automated and stuff like that. So did you notice anything, or did you talk to anybody, or did anybody talk to you while you were there about the fears of AI?
Yeah, no, I heard in this conversation, the typical ones that we're hearing, the security of the data, especially with electrical grid data, which is why the Azure version is so important. Like you don't want this data and information like just everywhere, right? So security was very, very important. At the time there were a lot more fear about hallucinations and is the data accurate? And you can see like Microsoft and Azure and OpenAI working so hard to make the data accurate and protect the data from hallucinating. And to that fear, like I've used it so much now. I like once you understand how it works, you know how to ask questions so that it never hallucinates anymore. Like you kind of know, I'm going to ask about this obscure thing and I know that it's never seen anything like this. So it makes up stuff, right? So I know now to ask data that's very like prevalent, and then I don't get hallucinations. I don't get fake data anymore. So those were the main things I saw. I don't know, Rajapal, like I saw excitement in Vietnam. I saw excitement in Thailand. Like people were excited about ChatGPT. Like they were less scared of it. And maybe that goes back to, like some of the statistics about the push for education. Maybe because we, study a lot more and it gives us more of an excitement about the future. I don't know. Like, do you have any ideas?
I believe partly because I have now a current like 11 years old, but back when we had a COVID in Thailand, like
Yeah.
the school shuts down, we were forced to do online education. So the kids, regardless of whether they have a contact with technology before or how to use it, they have to be on it.
Yeah.
So it's like the kids growing up being trained to be hands-on with all the technology. And instead of have like personal interactions and the classes like that, it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of researching. You're required to do that despite being 8, 9, or 10 years old. So
Yeah.
even little kids, they get family, they had to assimilate themselves to that at the early age. And us as professionals, I can't go into the office. Everything is now remote. And we had to find a way to make the existing process of communicating to our colleagues, communicating to our clients, and still continue the meeting, the collaborations, and get the job done. And there's nowhere else besides relying on the technology. And it's also the policy from the government, how you are not allowed to travel outside of a certain district because they were afraid of like the cross contamination. I believe that that really sparks the literacy and reliability on technology. So now that no matter what solutions comes out, we want to understand it, we want to adapt, we want to adopt it. That's just my thoughts. I think that really is a push for it.
And Duke, I see you come on too, and that's a great point. Like you go back to like Singapore, when you have a resource constrained country, and you said, for the good of our country, everybody, let's learn this together, and we're going to teach you the right way to do this. And you're working for your country to make your country better. When you're given permission from the government, I think the constituents are like, well, yeah, this makes sense. And so Singapore like adopted it, kind of like U of M. I think a lot about that. It's like the head of the administration said, students, it's okay. We want you to progress, to learn, to love learning. It's okay to use this now. And once that permission was granted, my son is like jumping on board. So I think maybe there's more permission allowed. But Duke, your thoughts?
I agree with you, Charlie. Actually, there is a lot of permission allowed. I think that a lot of the Asian countries, especially Vietnam and Thailand, don't want to be left behind. I also feel that I remember having the whole Encyclopedia Britannica collection in my house with all of those books. And if you needed something, you would have to look everything up. And now we've got Google. And very much like ChatGPT, we had to learn how to ask Google questions. So when you do a Google search and you're not getting what you exactly want, you go back and you change a little wording on how you do that Google search. I feel like a lot of the things that you're saying in regards to ChatGPT and things that you've learned as you're using ChatGPT and avoiding the hallucinations with the information that you're getting back from ChatGPT, it's very much like Google and how we do our searches now.
Yeah. And kind of my son's realization is like he used Google and there was just too much bad data coming back. And then he got dependent on using GPT-4 because it was more accurate for information, and he learned how to script it. So that's a great point, Duke, is that we're learning, and there's a drive to learn how to prompt it to get better information out of it. So Al, did you have something to say?
Yes, I had some few comments to make. So about back in Asian countries, right? So I can speak about from India point of view. What the government and policies did, that they made technology so cheaply and easily available to the entire country that it was no longer a barrier.
Yeah.
Okay. And they removed that barrier of price. It didn't matter how rich or how poor you were. You had the technology available for you. For example, this summer we went to India to meet friends and family, right?
Yeah.
And for about $1 a month, my daughter was getting 20 GB of data per day.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. For $1 a month.
Yeah.
And she was excited. She didn't have to worry about any data limits or anything. For $1 a month, 20 GB per day. No.
Yeah.
And here we get of unlimited like 50 GB a month.
Yeah.
to be shared by the entire family. And there she was getting 20 GB a day to do whatever she wanted at literally no cost.
Yeah.
Another thing the governments did was they made technology part of day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So there was no fear. And also the generation, they have much more younger generation population-wise.
Yeah.
And that also helped notch up the use of technology. And the younger generation is helping the older generation to overcome the fears.
Yeah.
We're in the house, everybody's using it. Now the older generation also is forced to use it.
That's a great point.
And it doesn't matter how, even the uneducated of the uneducated are more comfortable using their cell phones and smartphones, and they're using that for day-to-day work, just not for entertainment.
Yeah.
For their day-to-day work. It's amazing. It's amazing.
That's a great point. The access, the cost. So SIM cards, for example, I got to Thailand and they have the SIM card stations at the airport. You grab the SIM card and the price of data on the SIM card was like a fraction of what we're paying here in the States, right? And I think that's your point. Exactly. Yeah.
And right now I'm paying about $40 a line.
Yeah.
A month for 50 GB to be shared by my family.
Yeah, that's an access issue, and we'll talk a little bit about how there's free versions of ChatGPT, like in Bing Chat, for example. There's ways to get into this, and I want everybody to know that watching the webinar. Duke, did you have a comment too, or what? You had a comment?
I was going to ask, because you were mentioning that the data security and all that, and you were mentioning that to access the Azure version of ChatGPT would prevent that and actually safer. How do we access that? And do we have access to that? What's the cost? What's the price? Is it available to us?
It's a lot harder to access because it's set up more for enterprise and for large companies to get to that layer. But they did provide a user interface to allow access to the API, and I can help you. I'll help you get access to it. But so it's more suited for like a small to medium enterprise, a business that has, let's say, 10 people, and you build kind of a interface for them. But also that it's so secure, right? Like now your company data is not used to retrain the model. So I think it's important, and we'll touch base after this webinar. But like for people in our community, if we tell people, it's like, hey, for your small or medium business, use the Azure version because it's safer, and we'll build an interface. Then their data is protected, because that's an important point. Yeah. So this is you asked me about this one, and I think we're going to go long. I hope Duke and Rachapa were okay. But this is great conversation. I think we're this is important stuff to get out to the world. But I had a friend who has a startup, and this relates to startups and people who apply for grants, right? Scientific research. But the NSF, responded to this individual with a letter, and then they sent them to this link too, which was fascinating, because if you read through this and you see the 2 lines below, the NSF had to make sure that their proposal reviewers weren't using, like you said, ChatGPT or the open version to review the proposals, because the data could, this is research data for grants, like this is super secret stuff. So my guess is somebody started using it and they had to clamp down. It's like, whoa, no, wait a second. We can't take this data and evaluate proposals with this. But, to some of you out there, you're like, oh, this is interesting. Kind of like the simulated data concept is you can now say, this is a grant that I'm applying for. Here are the requirements. Can you evaluate this proposal that I wrote and grade it on the grant requirements, right? And you put the 2 in, and ChatGPT will say, well, you're weak on this part, you're great on this part. Add a personal story and you'll be golden, right? What does this do for grant writing, right? It makes it so much easier, and the grants can now be submitted. But now they got to be, Rachapa, you and I were talking about this. It's like you got AI augmentation on the evaluation side, and then you got AI augmentation on the grant writing side. So this side is probably getting bombarded with grant proposals, and maybe better written now. And then this side is like, oh, it's so much easier to write grants and do it better. So they're writing grants. But this is important for all of those out there, right? So if there's people using this to write grants, you don't want to get left behind, right? People are writing better grants. So, you should get started. You should use it in the right way. Take the requirements, look at your proposal, see how to improve it, and come up with your own content. Don't use it just to write stuff and cheat for you. But if you do it right, you'll write a better grant and have a better chance of getting money.
Absolutely. And I think that it's not just applied to grant writing, which we really need. And it really surprises me because I actually did use that for our grant writings. And I'm not sure if when it got evaluated, it's also AI against AI when they do the evaluations. But I believe that this also applies to small businesses when they need to get the proposals out to their clients. In several industries, like this gives you such a competitive edge to present your companies, to present your proposals, to make sure that you secure those business opportunities. And I think that if you are not using it, you are risking your business on not being at the same level of other businesses who already adopt this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had that conversation at EGAT too. There you do RFQs all the time, like small businesses, and you get quotes back, and it takes hours. Or like resumes, you got to read thousands of resumes. But what if you put the criteria in, and you could quickly process those at maybe just the first level, and then you read, use it to read through the ones it picks out. It would save so much time and match you with your requirements so much faster, right? So Al, you had something to say?
Yes, I had. So I the way I use AI, ChatGPT, is main time is I want to draft an email to a prospective customer, right?
Yeah.
And I have these thoughts. I write it down, and then I feed it into ChatGPT and say, take these points and draft me a professional sounding email.
Yeah.
And I keep tweaking it, and boom, I have a nice email, and my responses on those emails are far better from the clients. Okay. If I do my rate check, it's like, wow, if I had to write it myself and have ChatGPT come up with something, I get quicker response from my clients, prospective clients. And with that in mind, how do you see grant writers using AI to complement their work?
So I've used this already, but basically I go, who is the grant writing, who is the grantor? So I say, ChatGPT, this is the grant group, the group that gives the money, and understand what their values are, what their mission statement is, and what they're trying to do. And then sometimes I cut and paste the whole like grant application, and I was like, these are the requirements and what they're looking for. And then I'll take, my write-up, and I was like, does this meet their requirements, or what do you think? Does some of this stuff not really relevant? Should I change some of it? Or what are they looking for, right? And it gives me an assessment. It's like, well, you addressed 2 and 6 and 9, but you kind of skipped 1 and 5. Your assessment is weak. Like, you shouldn't even waste their time. Like, fix number 5. So then you go back and revise it, but it's what they want. It's in their requirements, right? And I hear this from a lot of grant people. It's like, we put this grant out and people just throw trash at us, what they've written before, cut and paste. I wish they would read our application and really understand what we're looking for, right? This way it matches both sides up. So it really improves, for the grantor side, it gives money to the people they want to give money to. And for the grant application side, you put together a better grant. Like it it's what they want to hear, or not what they want to hear, but really what they're looking for, who they want to give it to, right? So
basically, you're saying the success rate of getting money is far higher or better
absolutely.
if you feed it through ChatGPT and help you find all the missing holes in your application.
Absolutely. And I did this. My wife, it helped her get a job with a very, very big firm. And there were 2,000 people that applied, and she wasn't confident she was going to get it. But she had all the skills in her resume, and we took that company's profile, the job description, her resume, her LinkedIn profile, and it gave her a plan to showcase all of her skills in the best way. And she got the job. 2,000 people. She was the one that was picked for it, right?
Congratulations.
Same thing with a grant. Yeah, that's why I'm telling everybody, you have to use it in this way, because you will be left behind if you don't start using it in this way. Yeah.
So not just only grant writing, since it can do grant writing, it can do business proposals, it can do job interview, job applications.
Yeah.
Any other uses for like small businesses in different industry that you can think of that they can start adopting this?
So requirements, I was a systems engineer and project manager. Requirements you have to take in, and then you parse it out to your different groups: mechanical, electrical, production. This can bridge all those gaps, right, in terms of requirements. Kind of like what we talked about earlier, estimating or costing. That's one area I see it can prove a lot. I remember days when you manually highlight it. It's like, well, this is the cost from this department, and then you added up the numbers on a calculator. This can do it like, instantly. So you can have real-time understanding of your costs and how your data flows through your company. All of that is, start using this, because it'll change your life. And then you're going to be like me, and you're like, hope I never, the servers don't go down, because I need this.
So to your same question, Rachapa and Charles, I tell a lot of my business partners and associates and clients, just start using it once.
Yeah.
Just type something, use it, and then let your imagination take over. And very soon, ChatGPT AI will be your BFF, your best friends forever. Try to make them your BFF.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm talking to ChatGPT more often than
my wife came up behind me and I was typing, and she's like, "Oh, is that your best friend now?" It's like, no, you're
BFF. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
You got the pot, LG. You got it.
So this is a great conversation. I'm gonna talk a little bit about how people can get started, because there is 2 versions that are free. If you sign up on OpenAI, you get access to GPT 3.5, I believe, and you also get access, or if you go to Bing and then press the chat, that has GPT-4. And that GPT-4 is interesting because if you sign in, I believe that's secure. The data is secure too, but it's just not as good. They block some of the stuff, but that's a good way to get started for free with the best version of GPT. And it also, if you use that version, it references this stuff, because it uses a version of GPT-4 that uses what's called RAG. So it indexes the reference documents and shows you where the data came from. So that's a huge one if you want to get started, is Bing or ChatGPT. And then, number 2, I said, if you have LinkedIn Learning, if you don't have it, it's absolutely worth it. If you have it, go to Dave Burse, search for him. Rachapa, you asked me about prompts. He's got amazing prompts, because he knows he's a marketing guy and a prompt. He's psychological, and he writes these prompts. Yeah, that get you like really valuable content. Like, I think he's one of the most viewed LinkedIn teachers right now, LinkedIn Learn teachers, because he just gives you the prompts. He's like, here you go use it, right? So very, very valuable there. On the right there, you see the API playground. If you go into ChatGPT and you click on playground, it opens up kind of the API playground, and you can see there all the different examples that they've already provided for you. So you can see what the prompt is and how it would respond. And what I do is I copy that prompt and response and I put it into GPT-4 and I say, GPT-4, why is it interesting when I prompt you with this that you respond with this? And it'll explain itself. It's like, well, I'm interesting because I responded and I talk just like a human, or I'm very creative or whatever. And I'm like, what? So it's very meta, but it teaches you, kind of like what Duke was saying, it helps you prevent the hallucinations because it teaches you how it thinks about the data, right? So that's a good exercise. GPT Plus uses GPT-4, but it also has where you can like enter images. You can chat with it on your phone and it talks back to you. Like, absolutely worth the money for GPT-4 with multimodal stuff. I use it for fun all the time. Or when I'm driving around, right? I can't type. So I just talk to GPT. It's my BFF, like Al says.
Aww. Yes.
So verbal chat, I say use that. Also in GPT Plus, it used to be called advanced data analysis, I think, but you can take like an Excel file, you can upload it and say, hey, find all the interesting trends and chart it for me, visualize it. And it'll go through, kind of like what we used to use Power BI and Excel for, but we had to kind of know what trends we were looking for. This will use GPT-4 to find the trends and then find the best chart to present the data. It's absolutely incredible. Everybody should try it. And then, like we just talked about, the Azure version, that's the secure version. If you do want to do custom trained on your like manuals, internal documents, and you want your data to be held inside your company, then you need a Microsoft partner or an MVP, like me to help you make that secure.
I see. I understand. Awesome.
Thank you, Charles. This is like unbelievable amount of information.
Yeah, wasn't that fun?
It was fun.
It was fun. It's educational. I'm learning a lot.
And I've been taking a lot of notes while you were talking.
Yeah. Oh, were you? Great. Yeah.
And I know there is an AI tool that can actually summarize your meetings.
Yeah.
Take your recordings and summarize for you in bullet points. And I don't have that with me. I don't have that, but I think I need to invest in that.
Yeah,
it's free, Al.
Yeah, I just need to
do it. There's an Azure version too, and I'll do it with this webinar, but you can take this video, upload it, it'll transcribe everything, and it'll actually extract what's in the images too, like stuff on my slide, and it will index that. So I'll do that with this webinar and I'll send it to you, Al. So it's like, hey, this is our transcript.
Thank you.
And a summary.
That'll be fantastic. I'm a data nerd. What do I do?
Oh, that's awesome. So it's been wonderful chatting with everyone and diving into the world of AI. Charles, thank you so much for sharing all that awesome knowledge about how like small business can utilize AI, all the examples that you have given, the discussions that you pique our interest and generates questions. I love that. We're so lucky to have you. And Algie, thank you for playing such a key role in making this webinar a success. Thanks to all of you for joining us for our AI for Small Business webinar session, which is a part of APACC Small Business webinar series. I also want to give a special thanks to General Motors for supporting AAPI small business community. And please check out our playlist for more small business webinar videos. And for more information on APACC, the Small Business Action Committees, or Charles, our speakers today, please check the description and don't forget to leave your comment on what you would like the small business webinar to cover next or what you need as a small business. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.